ultra Tuscan orange grapefruit. My God, America is imploding.
America is imploding. Every day is a struggle, but that's okay. We're here. It is Fanzone. Welcome to another match. This is a big one. We've got Jacoby Bancroft going up against Nazario Montenegro. Both of these players haven't been around in a while. We'll get to that when we talk to them. But first, let's bring in the judges. Starting off with Mr. Nick TWOHIG. Nick, you're back in your comfy chair. You're now now that you're out of the picture, you're kind of a regular judge here. How are you feeling today about the match?
About the match, I feel very excited. Do I look like I just survived a tornado? Because that happened about a half hour ago.
What?
I changed my shirt. Don't you worry. My shirt is dry. Pants are still a little wet. But I've never been more ready to judge a debate match than right now.
Jesus. Okay. Well, I'll have questions about that later after the match. Next, let's bring in Mr. Parker. Robert, welcome back. You are here once again as well as a judge. How you doing today?
I'm doing lovely. I have a little bit of a change of scenery. I'm in my lovely dining room. I have a door that either leads to Narnia or a witch in the woods who carves little bear figurines. Maybe we'll find out after the match. Who knows? But I am excited to judge this.
Sounds good. All right. And then we also have the current Warzone singles champion, Mr. Andrew Barr. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. These are two of the funniest people in the community, so I'm expecting big laughs, but you still got to do one thing, and that's me.
All right, sounds good. Well, let's bring in those competitors. We will start off with the lower ranked competitor, and that is Mr. Nazario Montenegro. Nazario, the last time we saw you, it wasn't Fanzone yet. It was still the old thing with the name that I don't like saying anymore because it makes me uncomfortable. And I believe in that match, you lost to Robert Parker. But now you're back.
Yeah.
How are you feeling now that it's Warzone Fandom combined today?
If I'm not mistaken, in the match before that, I lost to you.
That's awesome.
So I find it very, very suspicious that you're both here today. Anyway, I'm feeling great. I haven't debated in a bit. I just realized that now I have to bring up musicals somehow to impress this guy.
Barr takes musical references. Me, Robert, and Nick all take cash. So you know how that works now. Let's bring in your opponent today, Mr. Jacoby Bancroft. Jacoby, you also, this is your first Fan Zone match. The last time we saw you, I believe you lost to Kirk Kowalkowski. That jerk. But you are sitting pretty at 3-1 in debate here. How are you feeling about debating Nazario today?
Terrified. I mean, I'm usually a very happy-go-lucky guy. You all know this. But debate scares the crap out of me. I am like just a puddle of sweat, and I try to take this seriously. Barr said something about bringing big laughs. There are no laughs to be had here. This is serious business that oh God. But I mean, yes, I'm doing well.
All right, sounds good. Well, guys, this is how the match is going to work today. We gave the competitors 4 prepped questions based off the categories that they drafted. Each competitor is going to get 1 minute to open each question and close each question with a 5-minute free-form debate in the middle, sandwiched in there. So that is how the debate is going to work. At the end of the fight, the 3 judges, being Nick, Robert, and Andrew, will write down who they think won that fight. Whoever gets the majority will win the point. The first person to 3 is the winner. So if we end in a tie after the 4 prep questions, 2-2, there will be a bonus question. We will get to the rules of that should we need to. Gentlemen, are there any questions before we get into the first fight?
True. Why do Hawaiian shirts?
I heard Hawaiian shirts.
I said, why?
That's actually Nazar and I's new team name. We're teaming up. We're Hawaiian shirts. So it's look for that in 2021.
Perfect. All right. Well,
I want a team's Fanzone debate now.
Magical. Okay, well, let's get into the first thing, and without sounding like I'm going to copy any other shows, I'll just say let's get ready to fight. We love Ted here at Fanzone. Okay, guys, the first fight, the question is going to be in the category of James Bond, chosen by Jacoby, specifically Pierce Brosnan's Bond. What is the worst action scene in a Brosnan James Bond film? So, Jacoby, you drafted the category. You were going to get to go first. You have 1 minute to open your argument. When you start talking, I will come in when you have 10 seconds left to count you down.
10 seconds. Okay, Die Another Day is the worst Bond film because it tries to be this like weird blend of campy yet gritty, has horrible effects, has characters make really dumb choices, and probably worst of all, makes Bond a complete idiot at times for like the sake of the story. Now, the reason the final plane sequence in Die Another Day is the worst action scene in a Brosnan Bond film is because it somehow takes all of those elements and jams them into one scene and creates an ugly, boring, and nonsensical finale. It asks us to care about Moon killing his dad, which we don't. It continues the movie's trend of horrible CGI with the plane's destruction and the laser beam. It forces us to watch a sword fight between the worst Bond girl ever and the second worst Bond girl ever. And worst of all, has Bond do almost nothing in the finale besides accidentally shoot a hole in the plane and then pull Graves' parachute cord when it's literally right in front of him. For all of that and so much more, this is the worst action scene in a Brosnan Bond film.
2, 1. All right. We move over to Nazario. Nazario, 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
I think he did two things right. I think he picked the right movie because Die Another Day is trash. And yeah, he also said that the CGI is horrible. I'm picking the scene where they chase him with a laser on a rocket sled through the snow. First of all, you have a laser to harness the power of the sun. You can point it anywhere in the planet, but he just points it right behind him. And he keeps following him because apparently he cannot just point ahead. Also, it's supposed to be the heat of the sun, and Bond doesn't even sweat. And this all ends up in a beautiful scene where they melt the iceberg and create a tsunami, which then Bond surfs. Not only he surfs, he parasails/surfs because, he finds a way to find a working parachute from the rocket sled and then just surf it between the gigantic waves. It's pretty epically stupid. So, yeah, that's worse.
All right. So what I'm hearing is a parachute and a parasail might actually be the same thing. All right. There we go. Good, guys. Okay. Guys, 5 minutes of free form. Remember, don't talk over each other. 30-second back and forth. And I will come in with 1 minute and then 10 seconds. Let's do it.
Yes, the CGI is horrible. That is fact. That is true. But you can't call it the worst action scene because of that. And yes, it's stupid Bond parasailing and getting out of the situation to get out of there. And it's done on spectacularly bad green screen. But at least it's Bond doing something. Bond is of active force in it. While in the final scene in a Bond movie, Bond is doing nothing to actually drive the plot forward except stand there and let things happen to him.
But there's nothing special about the badness of your scene. The scene takes place in a plane, and that's not even special for Bond movies. It's not even special for any kind of action movies. Anything from Die Hard 2 to Air Force One have scenes like that in a plane. And even Bond has in Moonraker a scene where they fight in a plane. So what does it make it especially bad? Mine has especially bad CGI and especially bad title weight.
I agree with you. It is not special, and that's what makes it the worst thing. In a movie where you have these ridiculous set pieces, like a laser chasing Bond, through the thing, a hovercraft minefield through a hovercraft minefield battle, a high-tech car chase. You have all these out-of-this-world action sequence, and then you end the Bond film, Brosnan's era, with a lackluster plane scene? What's up with that? That's what makes it the worst action scene.
That just makes it standardly bad, which is my point. You can even fight mediocre fight scenes on a plane like in Fate of the Furious. But you have to make it special because it's Bond. So we especially make it bad by making the guy first steal a rocket sled with, I don't know where the hell he found out a rocket sled, and then have the bad guy be so dumb that he doesn't know how to use a laser from space to, point ahead of where the guy's going in a sled that does not turn to the left or to the right, just go straight. And in the end, he just decides like he's hanging from the cliff and he's like, no, I'm not going to kill you this way. I'm just going to cut the ice because I'm smart like that. Global heating and,
Yes, absolutely, and I agree with that. He is very slow in killing Bond, but that's intentional. Graves hates Bond in that scene. He wants to make him suffer. He is showing off to the Korean generals in that scene the power of what he can do. If he just zapped Bond right out of the side instantly, that robs Graves of his revenge, because Graves is presented as this mirror image of Bond who wants to make him suffer for everything he did with him. That's the scene doing it right, as compared to my finale, where their relationship of being these counter opposites of each other plays no part in it, which is stupid and totally negates everything that was set up in the movie before, which is why mine is worse.
No, because his whole point is to kill Bond. He wanted to use the laser to kill him. So he had him. He's in the dead spot. He can just fucking kill them. And then in the plane scene, no, they don't even do anything interesting with the plane. The most interesting thing that happens is that Jinx sits on the pilot seat, turns left, so they go into the laser. And then you just realize how weak this fucking laser is because, it didn't even burn the plane.
Exactly. You're making my points for me about how awful this scene is, because it has this abundance of Jinx who is useless in the story, and her big plan to escape is to drive the plane into the laser. What is with that? And then we're forced to deal with these. There's a difference between, I think, good cheesy and like eye-rollingly cheesy. Their Bond outrunning a space laser is kind of the fun cheesy the movie going for. A sword fight with Miranda Frost saying, I can read your every move, and then getting stabbed with the Art of War saying, read this, is the eye-rollingly cheesy that makes my scene way worse.
I'm not sure that is as eye-rolling as the parasailing scene where the guy takes out the parasail, not parachute, and then he picks up a piece of the rocket sled, who I don't know how he turns into a surfing board, and then he decides to surf in the middle of melting icebergs, like you mentioned, in front of a gigantic, badly green screen. And that is not only the only part. When the thing ends and the tsunami shoots him, he kind of flies a bit, because that's how gravity works. And he flies ahead for like 30 minutes before
1 minute.
down.
Yes, I agree that is a spectacularly stupid scene, but at least it was set up in like kind of a logical way, because the opening of the movie sees James Bond surfing through there. So we know that he has experience doing that. And one, even though the way he gets out of it is dumb, at least he's doing something to get out of it. In the scene, in my scene, Bond is sitting there and Graves literally comes up to him and is taunting him and doing all that stuff to him. And all Bond has to do to beat the bad guy is pull the cord that's right in front of him. And the only reason the plane is firing out of the way is because Bond accidentally shoots a hole in it after being attacked. He is doing nothing. At least in your scene, he is the Bond that we know, who is working his way out of situations in clever ways.
He actually he worked his way out of the situation by pulling the parachute and then shocking him. So he dies in the turbine, like in every other airplane action film.
Time. All right. Nice back and forth. Nazario, we're going to start with you. 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
Nobody's arguing any of these scenes are good. My point is that his scene is not even especially good. It's not particularly good. What makes it the worst scene of all the Bond movies, you have to have something spectacular, stupid happening. It's a plane who loses the pilot because he's shot, like every other movie. They have a bunch of sword fights and a little back and forth there, and then he pulls the chutes to the guy and he goes into the turbine. It doesn't get more standard airplane fight than that. It's like anything, like I mentioned, Air Force One. If he even throws him off the plane, like, get off my plane. My scene has a gigantic laser with all the technology in the world that can heat the power of the sun, that doesn't even make Bond sweat. He can point it wherever he want to point it, and he cannot point it 10 meters ahead of where Bond is. He uses it to cut the iceberg when he just has to shoot Bond and kill him, and then we get the gloriously bad green screen with the tsunami and the stupid-ass surfing and no respecting for the laws of gravity.
Okay. Ending about 10 seconds early there. We're going to move over to Jacoby. Jacoby, you now have 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
Sorry, I have a timer that I like to time myself. Okay, Nazario's scene has really bad CGI, but my scene has bad CGI, dumb character moments, the worst puns, devoted time to the worst Bond girls, Bond being a dummy, and acts that defy the laws of physics. I think even more than Nazario's scenes, with things like Graves literally holding on to the side of the plane before being sucked out. I think in every way, my scene is worse. This was a movie packed with ridiculously goofy yet sort of fun scenes like the hovercraft battle, the space laser chase, a high-tech car battle, in an ice palace, and yeah, all of those are dumb, but at least they were bold swings to do something crazy. It's like they ran out of ideas for the finale. In a movie where you have all those previous action beats, you have to really up the ante and go even crazier for the finale, but instead, the movie backtracked. Like Nazario said, he's making my point for me. At least Bond showed flashes of the suave, innovative character we love in the laser chase scene. My action scene seems more determined to set up the Jinx spin-off film, so yeah, mine is worse.
Time. Oof, the Jinx spin-off film. That is not something that I want to see. Okay, this was great. You guys, I haven't had to yell at anybody for not letting the other person talk. That was magical. Okay, so Nick, do we all have our answers written down?
1 second, my app is loading.
Okay.
Are you tired, Jacoby?
Yes.
All right, I'm good. Sorry.
All right. Let's start with Nick. Where are you going and why?
Okay, first, I would just like to remind Jacoby that Plenty O'Toole exists. So let's be careful when we're throwing around worst Bond girl. But outside of that, I like Nazario's strategy of sort of saying, because there's nothing special about it, it makes it worse. But I think Jacoby actually used that to advantage in saying that it's happened so many times before, and it's actually worse than those times because of all the character moments, and at least the ice laser rocket thing, whatever. At least it swung for something, so I went with Jacoby.
Okay. So we will go to Roberto next. Robert, where are you leaning and why?
Yeah, I liked how both of these guys, like, obviously right off the bat addressed, yeah, they both have crappy CGI. Yeah, they both are kind of dumb scenes. But when you got into more meat of the scenes, I really liked how Jacoby was talking about how you get the character motivation of the villain. Like Nazario was talking about how the laser thing is misused, but Jacoby used that point, I think, really well, talking about how he wants Bond to suffer. And in the same way, I think Nazario had some good counterpoints to Jacoby. Ultimately, I went with, instead of Colby Jack, a Jack Colby cheese, Jacoby. Because I just think, like Nick said, I think Jacoby used Nazario's points, or refuted them better about specifically the character motivations in the movie, and talked about how his scene just doesn't make sense and is not special at all.
All right, so that means Jacoby does get the first point, but Barr, your vote didn't count. Where would you have gone?
Yeah, this is one of those battles where people took two different ways of arguing it. One person took it as the how dumb it was versus how boring it was. I think Jacoby just did a little bit of a better job by saying how it negates the films before it, and also just like the layering of how many bad things were happening on top of each other.
All right, so Jacoby gets point number 1. We are going to move on to question numero 2. This is in the category of Disney animation, chosen by Nazario, specifically the 1940s. And as someone who has recently watched this entire decade of Disney animation, I'm looking forward to this fight. So the question is, what is the most underrated Disney animated movie of the 1940s? Nazario, you drafted, so you get to go first on this one. 1 minute when you start talking.
Okay, for the most underrated movie, I look for the one that has the most quality and yet nobody talks about, which for my case is Make Mine Music. It's in the middle of the 40s, and it's a musical compilation of 10 shorts that are completely in different styles of music, and yet they flow together from one to the other because they showcase the best of animation comedy with some of the best types of music. Other movies from this era, like Saludos Amigos or Three Caballeros, people actually kind of remember them, but most people don't even think about Make Mine Music when they think about Disney, which makes it the most underrated. The shorts itself, people might remember them separately because they were so successful in their own that they eventually got re-released later as single shorts and used for the Disneyland television special in the 50s. The movie's great. I will expand on why each short is significant later, but the important part is that when you talk underrated, this is the one that people tend to forget about and doesn't deserve to be forgotten.
All right, time. Okay, so Make Mine Music. We'll move over to Jacoby. Jacoby, you now have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
Okay, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad is the most underrated Disney movie of the 40s. Like a lot of movies from that era, it's a package film, having just two separate stories side by side. But the reason that this movie deserves more recognition is because it's the only package film where the separate stories actually benefit from being put together. Both Ichabod's and Mr. Toad's stories are fantastic on their own, but pairing them with each other creates this compelling contrast between a beloved British children's character and a famous American legend. But that's just icing on the cake. The fact is that on their own, they're great stories. Mr. Toad gives us this joyful, adventurous protagonist whose energetic ambitions might get the best of him, while Ichabod Crane gives us a surprisingly morally gray protagonist who we wonder possibly deserved his fate at the end. Plus, Crane's segment ends with the Horseman attack, which is one of the best animated sequences to come out of Disney in the 40s. For all of those reasons and for a lot of others, Ichabod and Mr. Toad is the most underrated movie, Disney movie.
Jacoby channeling his inner Kaleb Koho at the end there to get as many words out as possible in a short amount of time. But guys, Make Mine Music versus Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
Am I frozen? Am I frozen?
Hello?
You're
Hello?
good for me. I can hear you, Jacoby.
Am I okay? Sorry, I was lagging hardcore for a second. I think I'm okay. Sorry.
We're all good. Nazario, you can hear him. Nazario, you're good. Okay. All right. So we'll cut that now. So 3, 2. All right, guys. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
The first thing I want to address is how the hell is this movie underrated? Everybody loves Disney's Sleepy Hollow. Everybody remembers the Headless Horseman. And Mr. Toad had rides in Disneyland and Disney World, two of the most beloved parks in the world. How can you say this movie is underrated when it's remembered that well?
That's exactly why I'm saying it's underrated, because I think Mr. Toad is the movie that not a lot of people have seen. When you go to Disneyland and you take Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, people may have seen it way back in the day. They don't know it now. It's not in the lexicon as the other Disney movies, as it is. There's elements of it that they all love, but it's not as well remembered as the other ones.
Make Mine Music is not even mentioned in the Disney lexicon. You say Sleepy Hollow, you say Mr. Toad, those things sparkle memories. They have rights, they have representation. When you think about Make Mine Music, it's a compilation of shorts, including some of the best that Disney has ever made. The Martins and the Coys is a take on the Hatfields and the McCoys, which is hilarious. They have Casey at the Bat, which is a very famous poem done to music about a baseball player who just is so cocky that he almost decides to strike out. He has Johnny Fedora and Blue Bonnet. He has the whale that wanted to sing at the Met. These are all memorable things. Peter and the Wolf, which is a classic Russian tale done with string music. And yet, nobody remembers about this movie.
You know why nobody remembers it? Because most of those suck. You have 10 shorts in there, and not a lot of them are good. And the problem that no one remembers them is because they shouldn't be remembered. As you say, the Martins and the McCoys ends with a joke about domestic abuse. All the cats join in is incredibly misogynistic. So is Casey at Bat, might I mind you. Along with all the little bits and pieces of there, some of them are just straight out boring. You have one good one in The Whale Who Wants to Sing at the Opera. That is one really good short out of 9 others. That does not make it the most underrated. It deserves to stay in the past, and it does not deserve to really be remembered by anyone.
So you are judging with current morals the thing that was made 80 years ago. When it was made, it was so well received that 7 out of the 10 shorts were later released, and Casey at the Bat even got a sequel with Casey Goes at the Bat Again. They re-released them successfully on television and on cinema. They just couldn't get the whole package movie to get the same tickets as the parks. And when you measured the successful shorts ratio from 6 out of 10 who actually were re-released later to the other movies that were compilations from the era, it's the best ratio.
So you're saying that they're all better because they had recognition back then? You just said that they didn't have recognition, but then they were all super successful and all super great on their own, that they deserve to have more?
I am saying it was good. It had some recognition, and then it was forgotten. Because now you ask people to list, you can ask anybody to list 20 Disney movies, and I bet you that Mr. Toad and Ichabod Crane will come up, and this one won't come up because people just forget that this is part of the Disney lexicon.
Because it's barely a Disney lexicon. It's a bunch of disconnected shorts. You say that there's a through line with music in there, but they're all so different and buried in there that they just seem mismatched. That's why my movie is so good and why it actually benefits for the package environment. Putting Mr. Toad and Ichabod Crane together creates this parallel between the two of them that makes both of them better overall.
They have nothing to do with each other. What are you talking about? Mr. Toad itself is a great story, and it's the superior one of the two. But Sleepy Hollow, even though everybody remembers the Headless Horseman because that's the cool part, you're going to try to sell me that is a good 32-minute movie when the 32 minutes, it takes 20 minutes that nobody remembers about no story and boring story before it gets going with the Halloween night, and it's only the last 12 minutes. And you say the Headless Horseman is the best animated sequence of Disney ever? It's 3 minutes long. In an hour and 10-minute film, that Horseman is on screen literally for 3 minutes.
Yes, because it's not about the Headless Horseman at all. It's about Ichabod Crane's journey through it. It's about his examination of a good protagonist into someone who maybe kind of deserved it at the end. And that's fascinating to consider. That's fascinating to dig into. That's why the movie isn't as well remembered as it is, because it's complicated, it's complex, and why it deserves to be more viewed on it, because it is
1 minute.
more
Ichabod Crane does nothing except eat. He does nothing except eat for 20 minutes. Nobody remembers what happens in the story or where it's going because they only remember Halloween night and the Headless Horseman. And I'm telling you, Mr. Toad is a great movie by itself, but it should have probably worked better with similar style animation. My movie, even it has The Whale That Sing at the Met, which is the most glorious of all the shorts. And it also has Johnny Fedora and Alice Bluebonnet, which is a romantic story with a heartbreaking ending, which is actually pretty great. And Peter and the Wolf is one of the most classic Russian stories that is represented by only music and a small narrator. Everything of this is actually pretty good, and it should have been more memorable and recognizable than it is. Jacoby?
I think you cut out for the last part of it, but it doesn't matter because I'm not sure what you said. But the reason that all your shorts kind of suck over the long period of time is because there's nothing memorable to them or nothing memorable that actually is said about them. They might have nice animation, but when you come with memorable animation scenes that deserve to be remembered more, it's things like the Ichabod Crane Headless Horseman scenario at the end that's really shocking and memorable.
Okay, Jacoby, you are going to get 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
Okay, maybe I can concede that one of the shorts in Make Mine Music is underrated and deserves more recognition, but that doesn't make up for 4 really unmemorable subpar shorts and 5 other like completely boring and really dated problematic ones that make up the rest of the movie. You got to take the whole movie into consideration. Ichabod and Mr. Toad, on the other hand, has 2 stories that I think are both equally underrated. For a Disney film to have a protagonist like Ichabod, who we start rooting for, then slowly peel back his layers to make us question if he's a good guy or not, and then having him meet a potentially grim fate is the type of challenging storytelling people don't necessarily expect from Disney, which is why I think it's underrated. Mr. Toad is underrated because it's another anthropomorphic animal tale, like a lot of those hits from the 40s, but it doesn't necessarily have the same heart, which I think turned some people off. But nowadays, if you view it, it's just a quick, fun, madcap adventure with a protagonist that has an infectious energy. There's a reason there is a Disney ride named after him, but not a lot of people have seen his movie. You can skip Nazario's movies because a lot of his is pointless. You can't skip mine, and you won't to.
All right. Nazario, you now have 1 minute to close yours when you start talking.
I think the first and most important argument is that his movie is not underrated. It's not underrated because it has recognition. It has recognition in the way of rights. It has recognition in lore. Everybody knows about the Headless Horseman and that scene. My movie has no recognition. There is one cameo in the Mickey Mouse shorts about the whale that sing at the Met, and that's about it. Alice Bluebonnet and Johnny Fedora is a great story. Peter and the Wolf, Casey and the Bat, the Hatfields and the Coys. It's a great compilation of shorts that they all work and they share the love of music. Blue Bayou is a short that actually got cut from Fantasia because it didn't have enough time, so they put it here. But they share music. Besides, his movies are not that great. I mean, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, fine. It's a good ride based on the Wind on the Willows, but the Wind on the Willows itself doesn't even have a female character in it, and he argues about misogyny. Misogyny in Sleepy Hollow. That's Ichabod Crane just started picking up fat women because they give him good food, and that's what he does. The thing has 20 minutes where he doesn't develop at all, and then a good 3-minute sequence in the end.
Time. All right. This was interesting. I'm glad I don't have to judge on this one. All right, Barr. Well, do we all have our votes?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I knew as soon as I was the last person to go and they picked the same person in the last one, I knew that this was going to be the tougher one to decide, and I was going to go first. So screw you guys.
Yeah, this one's hard.
We're all good now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Barr, we will start with you because your vote did not count last time.
Yeah, and I hate that. This was tough. This really was decided for me in the closing arguments. And I'm going to give my vote to Nazario on this one. I think that he brought up that there still was recognition back then and of now for at least half of the movie. So, yeah, that's why I'm going to pick with Nazario when it comes to versus Ichabod and Miss Toad.
Okay, so Nazario gets the first point from Barr. We will go over to Mr. Nicholas next. Nick, where are you leaning and why?
This was really hard. So let's look at that word underrated for a second, shall we? To me, for something to be underrated, you got to convince me that it's good and it is not recognized. Jacoby convinced me that Ichabod and Mr. Toad is good and Make Mine Music is bad, but Nazario convinced me that Jacoby's pick is recognized and his is not. So I'm at a very big impasse, and I would agree that I think Nazario's closing refuted some of the points that I was leaning towards Jacoby for, and convinced me that Mr. Toad and Ichabod, holy crap, I hate that movie, and I hate the music, but I voted for Nazario.
Okay, so Nazario does win the point, but Robert, your vote didn't count. Where were you leaning?
I was also leaning Nazario on that one. I think basically for the reasons Nick said, Nazario did a great job I wouldn't say that if people name top 20, then Ichabod and Mr. Toad would be in the top 20 that people name, but I do think that Nazario did a better job of proving that his movie doesn't have recognition now when Jacoby's does. I don't think either of them are like huge in the lexicon of Disney, but I didn't hear enough from Jacoby about how Ichabod and Mr. Toad isn't that well known, because we did talk about the iconic scenes and the good characters with the great energy. If it was which one is better, I think Jacoby wins that argument. Underrated, I think Nazario had it down there.
All right, guys, we are going to move on to question number 3, which is in the category of action adventure. This was drafted by Mr. Jacoby. The question is, what is the best scene in 1999's The Mummy? Lots of scene talk today. But we will start with Jacoby, who has 1 minute to open his argument. Best scene in The Mummy when you start talking.
All right, 1999's The Mummy is a movie that has it all. Action, adventure, romance, comedy, and just the right amount of horror to make it fun. And no scene exemplifies that more than the final night on the boat. It's the first scene in the movie that really captures all of those elements so well. The whole scene is staged beautifully. The first shot is the group of magi creeping toward the boat, and it really builds up the dread and horror of what's to come. Then after a few really strong character moments that prove how good of a leading man Rick O'Connell is by juxtaposing him with the American treasure hunters, flirting with Evie, and even dealing with scumbag Benny, it gets into a really exciting, really thrilling, really well-staged flaming boat action sequence that sees everyone get moments to shine. The boat scene is the best scene in The Mummy because it shows just how much fun this movie can be while remaining true to its characters and building them up for really great moments. I love a lot of the scenes in this film, but if you're looking for an example of a persona of what makes this movie so great, that's the scene you pick because it has it all.
Time. All right. Nazario, 1 minute to open your argument. Best scene in The Mummy when you start talking.
I actually think the best scene in The Mummy has to actually feature mummies, but that's just me. So I went with the final set piece when they are trying to resurrect Anaxunamun and O'Connell has to save her. This scene has actually everything. It has O'Connell trying to save her, and there are a lot of mummies that are like idolaters that he starts fighting. The humor is actually not based on dialogue. It's more based on visual gags. It's very inventive. He actually had to fight mummies and pieces of mummy. Jonathan comes up with a book to try to save the situation, and they can have like the separate scene where he's fighting a lot of the bodyguards that he accidentally wakes up with the book from Imhotep while O'Connell is fighting the mummies, and then Anaxunamun is trying to kill Evie. So it's like three fronts going around, and everything is very visually inventive. You cut off a mummy's hand, the hand follows you. You cut off his legs, the legs try to hold you and kick you. And the ending of the film itself is actually pretty visually impressive for a 20-year-old movie.
Time. All right. Guys, you know how it works. 5 minutes of freeform. I'll come in with 1 minute when one of you starts talking.
Sure. I like how you brought up the visual inventiveness of the scene because yes, there are some good set pieces, but the problem with that is the staging of everything around the final action scene makes no sense at all. Jonathan is in a room up the stairs, way up in another corridor, and they're talking to him like he's literally right next to them speaking. You have a shot of Imhotep standing on the stairs, and then the next scene is Rick running down those same stairs, and Imhotep is gone. The placement of your scene makes no sense at all. So while they have these individual gags, it doesn't work as an altogether scene because your placement is all over the place, as compared to my scene where where everything is at all times and it's done well.
I don't understand what the issue is here with regularly common things scenes. Everything your scene has been done in Indiana Jones way better, and even 3 times better. The movie has nothing special. Doesn't even have mummies in it. The Magi get into the boat. They set the boat on fire. They have a little sword fight with some of the people. There's a little shooting, and that's it. They actually decide to make clever jokes in the middle of the fight by keep talking about how different ways to jump in the water. Hebe, can you swim? When it calls for it, well, it calls for it, and throws her in the water. The other guy's like, what do I do? Wait for help. And then he jumps into the water. Then he looks like, he fooled me, and he jumps into the water. It's the same joke 3 times while the boat is burning, and they have the time to just stand there and make jokes talking. That doesn't make any sense.
You keep bringing up how you need like the mummy in the scene for it to be a good thing, but the problem with it, your mummy, the mummy is barely a factor into that final fight scene. The mummy Imhotep is a very scary threat throughout the movie. In the final action scene, he turns into an idiot. He stands there. He's literally standing on the stairs watching Rick break out Anaxunamun and fight the mummies, doing nothing when he could easily suck everybody dry and win the fight or go after Jonathan. When he's actually getting close to fighting people, he throws them. That's his whole move when he could easily suck them dry. Your threat is null throughout the scene, which makes it a less exciting and less good scene, as opposed to the Magi who are killing and slaughtering a lot of the people on the boat and they have to flee. That's why my scene is better.
When I said they have mummies, I meant multiple because there's at least 10 mummies on the screen at one time, which, by the way, the effects for this 21-year-old movie are still holding up. The other sequels don't have great effects, but this one actually really hold up. And the thing that Imhotep is doing, he's trying to save the ritual that he's creating, and he's using other mummies so they can keep going. And yes, he goes after Jonathan, but like you said, Jonathan is in another floor and running away, and he doesn't want to destroy the book. That's why he doesn't eat it, everything, like you said, because he has the Book of the Dead. And
exactly. Yeah. He has the Book of the Dead that can kill him. So what does Imhotep do? He stands there and he watches. He starts going after Jonathan. As soon as Jonathan says he has the book, he starts walking up the stairs. Once Rick realizes and breaks out Anaxunamun, and they're about to kill Anaxunamun and break Rachel out, Imhotep is still standing on those stairs. It makes no sense compared to the boat scene where everyone's fighting and shooting the Magi, who we don't know who they are or the threat that they possess or how many of them there are. It creates a really dangerous and really thrilling set piece.
It does not, because it's all played for jokes. First, they have to tell you the jokes, and then when they want to try to show you with the American treasure hunters, they are just shooting at the boat like it's a freaking arcade machine. Everybody's shooting at the same time and saying yeehaw and whatever, and there's like 3 Magi in front of them that don't get killed or anything. And the biggest joke in the scene is just that Jonathan comes down and says like, you know what? I made it away because I'm so great. And then there's an explosion, more fire. And guess what he does? He jumps in the water.
Exactly, because they have to jump in the water. Of course, these are the jokes, because the jokes actually fit better with the characters. They're not just individual joke scenes like Rick O'Connell running away from mummies and being scared, like all your humor in your last scene has. The humor comes with is Evie's juxtaposition with O'Connell about how she is this kind of more elegant English statement has to be thrown in the water. It shows how this weaselly little guy, the bug guy, is like,
1 minute.
What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And then he's like, oh, I jump in the water. When Jonathan says
It's actually body humor.
Excuse me,
like I said, he cuts the mummies, and then the parts that he thought of the mummies that were not fighting him anymore start fighting him. His sword falls off, and he's trying to reach for it, but suddenly a piece of a hand is dragging itself and trying to get the thing, while another mummy that doesn't have any legs is trying to grab a stone to kill him. So it's funny because it shows you the humor. It's a slapstick humor based on an action sequence. It doesn't stop the action to tell you a joke that it's not funny and let it jump in the water. And that is the part that's wrong with yours. The fire effects are great, and the magi get lost. You say that everybody's clear. The magi get lost. You cannot even picture where they are, except you know where? In front of the American guys not getting shot. By
you
20
keep how my jokes have to be told, and that's okay, because at that point you're still establishing the character. The way that you establish a character in an early part in a movie is by showing through their humor. It's how they joke in
dialogue in the middle of an act.
Why the dialogue
doesn't
work.
To it.
Time. Ooh, boy. All right. Nazario, we start with you. 1 minute closing when you start talking.
His type of action scene has been done in a lot of other adventure films. Like I said, Indiana Jones has similar action pieces that are way more fun. When Indiana Jones just gets the whip guy in front of him and then he just puts a gun out and shoot him, it's visually clever. It's an action sequence with a joke that actually works. His jokes are, wait, let's stop here and let's talk about it. Yeah, do you want to swim? No, I don't want to swim because I'm a fancy lady. I can swim when the situation calls for it. Well, he calls for it and he throws it. It keeps interrupting his action with jokes that are not funny. And the visual jokes that he tried to do doesn't work because all the cowboys are shooting and not killing anybody. Mine has visual effects that hold up for 21 years, 3 different types of mummy. It has the idolaters, it has Anaxunamun, and it has the bodyguards. It has the last sequence when they actually call the spirits of the dead to beat Imhotep, and you can see the visual of the blue ghost with the horse carriage dragging his soul away. It's impactful, and the humor is all based on the action that is happening, the way it works, not just stopping and telling jokes in the middle of action.
All right, Jacoby, you now have 1 minute when you start talking.
Nazario keeps saying 2 things about the movie, that like it's all been done before in Indiana Jones, and that the humor has to stop for dialogue. The problem with the question is the best scene in The Mummy. It doesn't matter if they're kind of similar scenes before that. It's how well The Mummy movie actually executes those scenes. So yeah, my boat scene does have everything. It has the action, you know, the humor, the horror, all of those things, and it works well. It's the first time the movie actually establishes all those elements as a really true standout scene for the movie. For everything like that. He keeps saying that impactful is what's happening in his scene, that you actually feel the things that are happening. But it's not true. Imhotep, the main villain of the movie, does nothing in that final scene. The fact that he's taken away by the blue ghost and then runs right into the sword, knowing where he should know he's immortal, is an idiotic move. When, in your action scene, when your main threat is an idiot, it takes away a lot of everything around the film itself. And it's why it's the not as exciting film as my action scene, which has all those elements done much better.
Time. All right. Let's bring in dem judges. Before we get our answers, I just want to ask Jacoby, did it hurt to talk negatively about parts of that movie?
It did. When I was rewatching this before that, and I was realizing all the flaws with Nazario's scenes, I was like, "Oh God, this isn't done well."
Could you read the question again?
Yes, I could. God, you and Cody, Jesus.
So I heard some things, and I was like, and then I second guessed myself. What's the question?
No, I'm pulling it up. I'm just in a different app. So the question reads exactly: best scene in 1999's The Mummy.
Okay.
Cody likes to do that too, though, where the fight ends and he goes, "Can I hear the question again?"
It would be, well, it's easier for me to decide who won when I know what the question is.
I know. All right. Robert, your vote didn't count last time, so we'll start with you.
All right. So I went with Jacoby. I think there we go. I went with Jacoby. I think Nazario did a great job of telling me why his action was better. But as far as the overall scene, I think I got a little bit more from Jacoby. Jacoby countered sort of the humor and the menace in Nazario's scene, and I think Jacoby, especially in his closing, did a great job of countering the similarity to Indiana Jones. Like, does it really matter? It's the best scene specifically in The Mummy. And then just the balance of everything, how the humor, it may stop the action a little bit, but it's to establish character motive, all that great stuff. So I think for that one, I have to go with Jacoby.
All right. We go to Barr next. Barr, where are you leaning and why?
I also went with Jacoby. I think Jacoby had two swings that Nazario either didn't counter well enough or just didn't even talk about at all. One of them being the Mummy becoming kind of an idiot towards the end, and also the biggest hit for me was the staging. How Jacoby broke down where everyone was and how it made no sense for those things to be happening with that way. So I went with Jacoby.
All right. So Jacoby does get this point. Nick, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone?
Yeah, full transparency. I've never seen this movie or the scenes.
Neither have I.
Is Iron Man in it, Jacoby? No. So I have to go off what you guys were saying. And yeah, for the same reasons Barr said, I heard that the villain was stupid and bad in the last scene. All I heard really that stuck with me was the visual comedy of the last scene. But I didn't hear a whole lot beyond that. There was really an argument. There was a big argument about comedy in these two scenes, but overall, I went with Jacoby.
All right, another clean sweep. Let's wow. Okay, 3 for 3. All right. So Jacoby gets point number 3. It is now 2-1 in favor of Jacoby. So as we go into the final question, Nazario does need to hit this one in order to bring it to the bonus question. If Jacoby wins this one, he will win the match. Let's get into it. Question number 4 is in the category of comedy, picked by Nazario. And the question, or I guess the sentence, however you want to say it, is pitch Groundhog Day 2. That's what we're doing. We're pitching Groundhog Day 2. So, Nazario, you picked this. You get to go first. 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
Groundhog Day, it's kind of a perfect movie, and it ends up kind of in a perfect way. But what happens after? When he finally decides to become a good person, instead of telling Rita what is happening, he actually breaks the cycle. But he never actually tells her. So when they start the next day and they start beginning their relationship, and they go back to Pittsburgh like they could, then he has a moment of clarity and he decides to come clean about it. And she feels completely betrayed and insulted because even though because remember, this is 1 day for her. She doesn't have the experience of all the months. She thinks that he was betrayed because this guy tricked her into liking him, and they break up. They break up very badly. But since the destiny, fate, or whatever you call it, wants them together, she starts in her own loop on that day. And she has to start every day with him in the morning, even though she really resents him now. And he doesn't have the understanding of why. And this movie would be directed by Jason Reitman, who's actually a very smart young director of comedy, has been proven it with many of his movies now. And I think it has some legacy to it.
Time. All right. Jacoby, you now have 1 minute to pitch your version of Groundhog Day 2.
You can't make Groundhog Day 2. That's the theme for my movie. Okay, here's my pitch. Everyone in Hollywood always asks Bill Murray the same question. When are we getting Groundhog Day 2? And you know what? Bill Murray is sick of it. The legendary actor has spent years avoiding a sequel to his comedy masterpiece that's perfect, despite countless offers and different fresh takes. Yeah, right. After a tough situation puts him in like a dire financial need, Murray finally agrees to return for the sequel, determined to phone in his performance for a totally soulless cash grab opportunity. After a horrible first day of shooting, Murray finds himself reliving the same first day over and over and over again. Since becoming a better person is totally out of the question for a Hollywood celebrity, Murray realizes the only way to bust out of this nightmare is to work with the difficult cast and crew to actually make a Groundhog Day 2 that doesn't totally suck. And my directors are Jorma and Akiva, who directed Popstar Never Stop, Never Stopping, who do a great job with Hollywood satire.
Strike Hollywood satire from the record. Okay.
Great job at what? Great job at what?
All right, guys. 5 minutes when one of you starts.
How exactly is he going to make a good movie in one day? Movies take between 2 weeks and 3 months to be shot, and he has one bad day. You can have a bad day on a set and have a great movie after it. But you're saying that his way to get out of the loop is by one day being a good actor? That doesn't really work on your premise. Also, this is a meta sequel or a meta comedy. Those are not actually really easy to make. Have you seen Bewitched?
But you're comparing what a Bill Murray directed by Jorma and Akiva Schaffer comedy would be to Bewitched. That's ridiculous. For starters, like, how would it be done in one day? It's going to be so hard to make Groundhog Day in one day. Nazario, that's the point of my movie, that it's impossible to make Groundhog Day 2. And that's the conflict of it, that he has to continuously try to make it good, trying different wild pitches in order to make Groundhog Day good. As compared to, it's like,
your premise, man. He cannot make it good in one day. I just told you.
That's the point of it, because he has to try. Because the point of it is maybe at the end, he doesn't necessarily have to make the good Groundhog Day 2. And that's the point that he realizes at the end, that it's not about just making the good movie. It's about being true to yourself. If he's happy with his performance, if he's willing to remain a good actor for all of it, then that's what matters. And it remains true to the character. And second of all, how dare you? You said in your opening point, Groundhog Day is perfect. It is a perfect movie and a perfect ending. And then your sequel is like, well, what happens after? Those are completely hypocritical situations. You have them break up the very next day after Bill Murray spent 500 years, and even more, trying to become a good person. The very next day they break up.
Because to her, it has been one day. And she feels betrayed when he decides to suddenly come up and tell her. He's not in the new loop. She is in the loop. Because she has to understand now that what it took him to become a good person is different than tricking her into loving her.
Yeah, but you're
a completely different premise. Bill Murray, wait, let me speak. Bill Murray is not the person in the loop this time. Every day he wakes up feeling like a good person and feeling like he's got the love of his life. But he has this weight on his chest, which is that he thinks he's basically lying to her. And he comes up to her. And every time he comes up to her, it breaks her heart again. And she has to come back and be with him the next day. This is a smart way to do a sequel, because it's a separate bubble to a movie that is already a good bubble in it. And my director, Jason Reitman, is legendarily involved. Yeah, okay, cool.
Your movie you said it's the right way to do the sequel. It's the same exact thing, just focusing on the least interesting character from the original one. That's bogus. That it brings nothing new to the table. The time loop genre has evolved so much in the past 25 years. And for starters, you would have to recast your Rita and your Bill Murray. Bill Murray makes Groundhog Day. In order to have a younger Phil, in order to do that, somebody else would have to play Phil, and that just doesn't work.
Not necessarily. Did you not see Captain Marvel? There is great technology that you can use to rejuvenate people. If you can use Samuel L. Jackson and make him look like he did in the 90s, you can actually do that with his people.
That is ridiculous for why you're doing it.
The technology exists now. And by the way, my director, who is Jason Reitman, is the son of Ivan Reitman, who was good friends with Bill Murray and Harold Ramis. He has history with them. He knows the kind of humor that they would come and work with. And that's why he was trusted to do Ghostbusters Afterlife, which may or may not be good. We haven't seen it yet, but most of his movies are good, which is actually kind of the vibe that they should be going for with this. Your directors already did their time loop thing when they produced Palm Springs. And
Jacoby.
Yes, they were part of Palm Springs, and that's the point. That's the satire of the movie, that they're bringing on to do another time loop movie to make Groundhog Day 2 because they had a successful one before. But that's the joke, that they can't. And now Bill Murray has to work with people who don't know what they're doing. Hey, hold on.
You're saying it has to be good for
let
the loop.
Let him finish, Nazario, and also 1 minute, Jacoby, you get the next 40 seconds.
Okay, where was I? That you're bringing it to like, how does this movie end? That it's going to be impossible to do because they already did the time loop movie. All those factors play into my movie and actually make a good meta sequel. You said it yourself that meta sequels are hard to do, and that's the point of it. Because my sequel can actually comment on the time loop genre overall. Because we've had so many different ones over just the past few years. Edge of Tomorrow, Happy Death Day, Palm Springs is like a rom-com, a sci-fi, and a horror movie. These are all different genres of movies. All these things are like that. So the next logical step, instead of doing the same thing that you would do with yours, which is just tell the same story with a different character, mine's actually expanding on what makes time loop stories so interesting in the first place.
Let's move over.
That's time?
No, you go ahead. You I'll give you another 30.
Again, your premise is broken because you just say yourself that it's too difficult and it's impossible and they're going to try to do it and nobody's going to be able to do it. They're going to bring people who actually have done time loop movies. They're going to bring Bill Murray and they are going to try to make this time loop movie to work. But you're saying he needs to make it good to break the time loop and they can't. Your movie is about how they cannot do this. How are you selling me this as a functional movie, man? Doesn't work.
You said you got the full 30 to talk, or do I respond?
If he stopped, so you have 5 seconds.
Okay. Well, I guess I have 3 seconds.
You guys started so well. Okay. No, that was fun. Okay. Jacoby, you get to go first on closing. So 1 minute when you start talking.
Time loop movies have evolved a lot since the original Groundhog Day, and instead of going with a sequel that brings nothing new to the table and spits all over the first film, the much better way to go is to make a movie that comments on the state of time loop movies now. The first film set the standard for every time loop movie we've seen since, and now we have the chance to bookend that by having Groundhog Day 2 essentially changing the game again in a hilariously meta take. Again, there is no good way to make Groundhog Day 2. Nazario's whole point about my movie is that he can't break out of loop. He can't make a good Groundhog Day 2. That's going to be the lesson. That's what he learns at the end, that you really can't make this. That it's not about making the good movie. It's about finding the passion in yourself to be a good actor. And this would allow Bill Murray to star in a movie that not only plays to his strength and doesn't DH him for like the whole process, but it also works to comment on how things have changed for the time loop genre in the last 30 years. My directors do a great job in order to have already satirized this in Pop Star. So they know the way that Hollywood works, and it's going to create another great Hollywood satire about our reboot crazy time loop culture.
Nazario, 1 minute when you start talking.
The first thing he said was that he needs to make the movie good so he can break the loop. And then he tells you for 5 minutes that he cannot make the movie good because that's not the point. He's flipping the story that he tried to pitch at the beginning. And like I said, if we actually go with realistic takes, we would have had this argument 20 years ago. But luckily for me, the technology does exist that you can make the Bill Murray and Andy McDowell look young now because it has been work. It doesn't work every time. It works sometimes. It has been proven to work. His idea has never been proven to work. He didn't even name one example of a meta sequel, which they exist, by the way, a meta sequel of a movie like Scream 4, for example, that has been successful in the comedy genre. He didn't mention anything. I have Jason Reitman, who actually knew these people who created the original and grew up with Bill Murray, understands his humor. He has been proven with movies like Thank You for Smoking, Young Adult, Tully, Juno. He's a good comedy writer. His is Lonely Island, and they already made Palm Spring, which is probably the best they can do with a time loop.
Time. All right. Boy. That got a little stanky. All right.
I am not ready.
All right. Well,
this hurts.
Robert's the only one that's ready to go.
Yeah.
Hang on.
All right.
Oh God.
Tim, can you read the question? No.
You got to pre-pitch your ideas.
We'll do another 7 minutes.
I'm down for that.
I think Jacoby needs to go to the ER.
I can't run the AC because it's so loud. I live in Vegas and it's so hot in my house.
Oh, gosh.
Yikes. All right, looks like Barr is ready.
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, Nick, you're going first.
I'm not good at it. Oh, hang on. Okay.
Did you write it down?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good. All right, Nick, your vote didn't count last time, so you get to go first. Where are you going?
Okay. This is very difficult. I think.
Oh, I may want to change mine.
I think
Can't.
you can't. 'Cause I'm stuck in it now too. I think Jacoby swung big, and I really, really appreciated the swinging bigness of Jacoby's pitch. And he pointed out a lot of issues with what Nazario pitched. However, before Jacoby got to comment on Nazario's, I really liked what Nazario was pitching in terms of what's her name, Andy McDowell, having to come to terms with their relationship now. And then Nazario's closing also added another point for me in terms of not naming a meta sequel that has worked in the comedy genre. And then on top of that, Jacoby, I agree the de-aging would be horrible. I wouldn't like it. But that wasn't enough to win me, especially when I didn't hear anything bad about Jason Reitman doing it or anything like that. So I slightly went with Nazario.
All right. Robert, you were very certain you wrote down your answer right away.
I
Where are you
was.
leaning and why?
With pitch arguments, for me, I judge them as which movie would I rather go see? I'm picking between the two. Which one do I want to see get made? Which one do I want to watch? And with that, I have to go with Jacoby. I think Jacoby made a great argument of just why we don't need Nazario's movie, because it doesn't bring anything new. It spits on the first one, and it's obviously like we could have had this debate 20 years earlier, but we're having it now, and I don't want to see a de-aged Andy McDowell by 35 years, and I don't want to see her trapped in a time loop until she falls in love with him, because that's pretty rough. That Nazario's pitch is just something I'm not on board with. I don't want to see Jacoby, like Nick said, swung big. It's something that I think would be interesting. I don't know if it would work, but it's something that I'm more interested in checking out.
All right. So, Barr, that comes down to you. The fate of
Thanks.
these gentlemen is in your hands. Where are you leaning and
Great.
why?
Great. I hate this because I actually really, really, really liked both of these pitches.
I do too.
And normally, like when people debate, I generally find whoever like breaks their thing down the best or breaks the opponents down the best usually wins. But they both started really picking at things that were both really good points. So I literally had to go with the one that I would be the most interested in seeing. And even though I really, really like both pitches, the one that I personally would like to see between the two of these is Nazario's.
Ooh, all right. I did not see that. That was where that was going. Wow. Okay, so Nazario wins the point. Our first split decision of the match. Nazario wins point number 4. We are tied.
God, I
2-2.
hated that.
That was a great fight. I agree. I want to see both of these movies as well, actually. When you guys sent in the pitches in the green room, I loved them. So that was a great fight. This does mean we're going on to the speed round. Ooh, boy, what will happen? Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to say the category and then the question. I will then repeat the question a second time after I have said the question twice. You guys are open to say your answer. The moment you say your answer, whoever it is locked in and whoever spoke first is going first. Each player will get 45 seconds. Second player will get 45. We go back to the first for a 30-second rebuttal, and then the second player for a 30-second rebuttal. That's it. Do we understand the rules of how this will work, gentlemen?
Yes, but I'm going to forget in the heat of the moment, so I apologize for that in advance.
That's fair. You also can use Google if you would like to pick up an answer if you want. That is something we have allowed. So
Is this going to be a really hard question?
No, just sometimes people like to abuse the power, but
People just can't think of anything. Mine goes blank.
I have to give it to everybody because we've given it to other people.
That's
so
right. Now my mind's going to go blank. I think myself.
All right. The question is in a Warzone category. The category is sci-fi fantasy. And the question is, what is the best sci-fi performance of the 2010s? Again, what is the best sci-fi performance of the 2010s?
I'm going to go with Michael Shannon in Midnight Special.
Okay.
Give me 1 minute.
So now I'm going to go first, and I have 30 seconds.
45. Then he'll go
30.
45. Then you'll go 30. Then he'll go 30.
I had already forgotten.
That's fair. I believe that movie was made in 2016. Warzone.
There's a lot of other ones, but I just love this movie.
There's at least 2 other performances in sci-fi movies from the decade.
There are a lot. Does The Meg count as a sci-fi movie? Because Rainn Wilson.
Probably.
Do you want to change it?
I'm thinking about it.
Could go for the shark.
Yeah, the shark in that movie is great. It's real Oscar bait.
I get it.
I'm gonna go with Ryan Gosling in Blade Runner 2049.
That was the one I was thinking of. Okay. So with that, we have Jacoby with Michael Shannon in Midnight Special, and Ryan Gosling in Blade Runner 2049. Again, guys, you have 45 seconds. Jacoby will start, then Nazario 45 seconds, then 30 seconds to Jacoby, 30 seconds to Nazario. I'm going to stay on screen to give you guys the 10-second counts and whatnot. So, Jacoby, you have 45 seconds to open the argument of best performance in a 2010 sci-fi movie.
It's just really quick. It's super funny. I should have been prepping instead of making the Meg jokes. I realized I had a ton of time to prep, but that's okay. All right. I think Midnight Special is one of the best sci-fi movies of the recent years because just of kind of how it tells a very intimate story set against a crazy world. And at the core of it is Michael Shannon's performance as a father for this young kid who is out of this world special with crazy abilities. And it's not just the crazy things around him that make it a good movie. It's how he has to deal and cope with the fact that his son is different and do at all costs protect him no matter what against these outstanding out of these world forces. And in order to do that is so against type from Michael Shannon, who we're used to seeing as crazy, as out of control and everything. The reason why this is the best performance is because of how intimate he is, about how you feel his father's love in this really great sci-fi movie. And that's what makes it a good movie overall, not just a good sci-fi movie.
Time. Nazario, 45 seconds for you when you start.
Ryan Gosling was given the task to follow, an impossible task, basically, to follow one of the most beloved movies of all time in sci-fi realm, which is Blade Runner. And he didn't only hit it out of the park, he excelled in every level. He actually makes you believe through his acting, which is pretty subtle, that he's not really human. He is a replicant. He's a replicant, so a robot who basically wants to become human. The way he has his relationship with his girlfriend, which is basically his digital assistant, and how he interprets that relationship physically with the hooker that he brings into the house, it's beautifully to watch and subtle. Also, he interacts with the original star Harrison Ford in this movie and makes it work. It's a movie that was made 35 years later after the original, had no business working, and is actually in some ways superior to the original.
Time. All right. Jacoby, 30 seconds when you start talking.
Nazario brought up subtle as a performance, but I think both of our performances are actually surprisingly subtle for both of these actors. So they're both pretty much the same. The reason why Michael Shannon does a better job before that is because of the heart and the emotion behind that. Yes, Ryan Gosling does give a great performance, but he's also overshadowed by a lot of the crazy things and the greatness that is Blade Runner 2049. The direction, the cinematography, all that stuff is all good. The reason Michael Shannon is so great in that movie is because it's all centered around his performance overall, and you feel the heart and the emotion that gets you so invested in that movie in the first place.
Time. Nazario, 30 seconds when you start talking.
The point of the acting of Ryan Gosling in Blade Runner 2049 is to be less than human. So he cannot give it like the heart and the tears and the emotion that he would normally do, because actually restraining from doing these emotions in a very epic movie is what makes it a great performance. Michael Shannon is good, But Michael Shannon is in everything. He's actually better in another movie that is also sci-fi, which is The Shape of Water. And basically, mine is an impossible movie that had to be the sequel to a movie that was impossible to make a sequel to. And yours is just another version of Looper.
Time. All right. So we'll bring back in the judges. Guys, this is it. Write down your choices and let's find out what's going to happen. Do we all have our choices written down?
No.
I think Barr is muted. Oh.
Do we have 30 minutes to think about this?
No, but I will tease you guys with something else in the meantime while you're waiting. Maggie is watching The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and she says it is, quote, so stupid.
It's true.
What did you say? Angsty. Oh, and also angsty is the other word she's
Paul
using.
Giamatti's in it.
It's true.
But
Can I give you 4 other options real quick while they're deciding?
In that one too.
Amy Adams in Arrival, Matt Damon in Martian, Alicia Vikander in Ex Machina, and of course Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell.
Jesus Christ!
I almost went with Arrival. To be honest,
I almost did too. That was my first thought. Like, just immediately when you said it's like, oh, it's Amy Adams, and I was just like, let's just have fun.
All right, we good, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I believe Barr was the deciding vote last time, so he gets to go first.
Oh, screw you. This was real close. Once again, it was 2 different styles of how they approached it, and as an actor, it was really interesting to hear how the performance affected both of these people. I went with Jacoby. I think Nazario started to talk more about the movie, and Jacoby talked about how Shannon's performance was the linchpin of his.
Okay. Nick, we go to you next. Where are you leaning and why?
So both of you convinced me that the performances are great. And for different reasons, too. You had to convince me that Michael Shannon was a loving father in this crazy sci-fi world dealing with these things we couldn't imagine. And you had to convince me that Ryan Gosling was somehow less than human while portraying human emotions. So you both sold me on that. It really came down to what was said about the other persons. And at the end of the day, Jacoby said there are other things in Blade Runner 2049 that sort of overshadow Ryan Gosling a little bit. And the only thing I heard about Michael Shannon was that he was better in a different movie. So that's why the win goes to Jacoby.
All right. Robert, you didn't get to cast your vote. Where would you have gone?
For the same reasons as Nick, I also went Jacoby. I think Nazario, I think both of you spent a lot of time talking about how good your movie is, how great your performance is. Both agreed that each other's performances are good because they are. I agree pretty much with what Nick said. I think Jacoby pointed out other things in Blade Runner 2049 that outshadow and overcast Gosling's performance. And I didn't hear enough about why Shannon was bad specifically in Midnight Special.
All right. Well, so with that, your winner, Jacoby Bancroft, going on to play Kaleb Koho in the #1 contenders match. Jacoby, you got another win on your debate record. You are now, I believe, 4-1. How are you feeling about the way you played today?
The only thing I came into this match to do is to win the mummy point. That was the only thing that I wanted to do, and all I cared about at all. So it's a plus. The win extra is great. That was such a great back and forth. Nazario had me on the ropes of this thing like so much, and it made me, man. I thought like I had it on so many times. It's like when I went into a fight thinking like, okay, I got this point. There's no way he can rebut. And then he brought up such great points to counter and to go off. And it was like, oh shit, that's a really good argument. You're convincing me, and I'm fighting against that point. But it's super fun. I love debating and I hate debating, and I'm a mess. But it was so much fun.
I definitely concur with that statement. Love debating, hate debating. It is the most accurate thing ever. So now you're going on to play Kaleb Koho, the man who likes to say your full name during matches to get under your skin. How are you feeling about that?
I just think that'd be pleasant. Joke's on him. If someone says my full name, I'll take that as a compliment. So joke's on you, Koho, or Kaleb Koho. Yeah. Either way, it's gonna be fun, and yeah, I guess that part is revealed yet. He's my partner in Warzone. So now it's a partner. Kaleb and I have formed such a strong partnership recently, and our bond is so strong, and we've become the best of friends. So it's going to be like brother against brother. So I'm really looking forward to that. So that's going to be good.
That is true. That is accurate. That will have happened by the time this comes out. So Nazario, you didn't get the win today, but you fought your heart out. You made it to the bonus question, and just didn't get quite enough votes there. How are you feeling about the way that you played the debate today?
I wish I probably would have watched Midnight Special. That probably would have helped me. Since I haven't, I had nothing to argue against, which is something that has happened before in debate. And it always sucks because there's nothing worse than having no weapons in a fight. Other than that, I think most of the votes went the correct way. To be honest, he was convinced by him that the Bond scene he picked was better than mine. Mine was shorter. I may guess that was a mistake because you had less things to elaborate on and you tend to repeat yourself. But overall, I'm also just came here to win the 1940s Disney argument, so I'm glad about that.
That's fair.
And good luck to you, sir, in the future.
Thank you, Nazario. You're a great opponent.
So Nazario, this does mean that you're out of this title picture, but what it also means is that you will still be in next year's tournament when we do a full 16-person tournament. I'm
probably 16 because I think I'm like 3-3 or 2-3 or something.
You are 2-3. I'm looking at it right now. You were 2-2 and you were ranked 7, so you'll probably end up in the 11 to 12 area, depending on how some of these other seeding matches go. So is there anybody that you really want to debate against that you haven't before? Or that you have and you want revenge? I don't know.
You know what? I am due a softball. Who's the worst debater you have?
You want me to actually look and see? Ranking?
You don't want that.
Ranking.
You don't want that.
We have a couple 0-2s. We have Doug Cassel is 0-2. I wouldn't say he's the worst. He's just 0-2, but he's very good. He just barely lost to Boatman. And then the next person is RJ is 0-1.
You know what? I'm gonna go with my gut and ask you for Nico Suave Rigoli. Give me that.
I actually Nico is also 2-3. So if it doesn't happen in the tournament, maybe we could do it as an exhibition or something. We can make something happen. All right, well, guys, both of you played really well today. Thank you for making it a great match. Judges, final thoughts. Nick, what'd you think?
That was good. I'm sure Barr is not disappointed as all the laughs were brought. Haha. Kidding. That was really that was really tense and fun to watch. So yeah, cool.
Barr, what about you?
I was impressed. That was the one thing I asked for aside from the laughs. I was impressed. They made this really hard. I was in pain making some of these choices, as you probably saw. But there's a reason why these two are probably two of the better debaters in this league. So, absolutely.
And Robert, your final thoughts.
Yeah, this was also tough. I wasn't in physical pain, but mentally I was wrestling with myself, and I too was impressed.
Awesome. All right, well, guys, that was this episode of Fanzone. Be sure to join us. We're going to be back in 2 weeks' time for the next match when we see one of those seeding matches like I talked about. We've got Ryan Permison facing Richard Schwartz. That is coming up in 2 weeks' time, so be on the lookout for that. But until then, guys, we'll see you next time. Grab a Michelob Ultra, kiss your loved ones, and have a great night.
That's my bad. I was sending a tweet.